Okay, good evening, everybody. How is everyone doing? It is 8 p.m. on Tuesday, the 10th of September. Looks like a lot of people were here early for once, including myself. So thank you for that. Thank you, everyone who has turned up. As always, takes the time to listen to me ramble on live rather than watching it either a little bit later or not watching it at all. So thank you. And cheers, Chris, for letting me know that I am all loud and clear, which again, is useful to know instead of me rambling on. Right, what are we going to talk about today? Well, the title kind of said it. Is it time for doom and gloom? Is it time to be worrying about where the market is, or is it just the fact that we are so highly strung within the crypto space that we can turn from exuberance and greed to depression and fear in no time whatsoever? And actually, this is just part of the roller coaster that we've got to go through. And I kind of want to have a bit of a discussion. And I started off by calling this Doomsday because I was kind of thinking really about first article and talk about presidential debate tonight, which actually for us is tomorrow, Wednesday the 11th. It's at 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, I think, UK time. And also we've got CPI data then. So, where do we think that's going to be? Are we going to see some news there that might ultimately lead to decisions being made in next week at the FOMC, which will lead to rate cuts, how severe those rate cuts are, etc., etc. We'll dive into that all a little bit later on. But what I am noticing is sentiment at the moment. Sentiment, for me, it feels like we're back in the back end of 2022, maybe early 2023, where there's some hopeism there, but generally people are down. People are not really excited about crypto anymore. No one's really talking about it. And if they are, there's some worrying more than anything else. Fear. I'll go straight onto the live screen page so we can talk about it. But, you look at the fear and greed index, and today, 33. Probably going to go up tonight because we have had a bit of a move. But yesterday, 26. Last week, we were down at 22. Extreme fear. People completely worrying about where the price is going to go and whether or not this is the right time to be in the market. Then you start talking about what's happened in past cycles, but also just historically across the traditional financial markets with rate cuts and where that may lead us. And people just seem to be building a picture right now that actually this may not be the best place that crypto's ever been in. But at the same time, Bitcoin, that magic internet money that we seem to love so much, it's still hovering just under $60,000. So I understand where sentiment is, and we haven't dropped from 76 down to 22 over this course of a couple of days. It's taken weeks, months to kind of get there, and there is an element of patience within crypto, of course there is, and there's also impatience, which kind of drives people to realize they're not seeing the gains they thought they were going to do. Maybe they bought at the wrong time. That turns into anger turns into fear. You get the whole picture. So I do feel that there is a bit of a sense of doom in the market. Certainly gloom. Maybe not doom, but certainly gloom. But of course, being an Avenger call, we've got to call it something. So Dr. Doom will do. And actually, hey, I got to put Mount Doom in the background, but we'll leave the Lord of the Rings for another time. So what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to cover a couple of news events. Obviously, I'm going to talk very briefly, but we do need to talk about presidential election that's happening tonight, because there could be some ramifications there. I don't really think we're going to hear a big battle about crypto, but we may get a narrative as to where sentiment is in terms of who might be taking office come January next year, who's going to win the election in November, which will have big ramifications. Then we're going to just talk about briefly CPI and the upcoming FOMC meeting and potential rate cuts. And I say briefly because actually next week I want to spend a bit more time talking about rate cuts and what that's done historically and how that can affect Bitcoin. And so we'll talk about it because I think it's there. I have had a few questions or a few comments from our team members, so appreciate those. We'll answer those throughout the call. We're going to dive into Bitcoin as we always do. Unfortunately, I am going to give a bit of a gloomy side of things, but I like to try and polish that off with some hopeism. I don't know, hopium, that's the word I was looking for. And then we'll go and have a look at our beloved Tau and a few other altcoins out there and just how the altcoin market is doing. Again, if you do have any questions, throw them in the chat. I will always be looking at that, try and respond to those as best as I can. But let's just have a look where we are. So what can we really see? Weekly chart Bitcoin. We've had a nice move up. We kind of bottomed out at the back end of last week with some news announcements, went into the weekend, had a nice weekend pump. Yesterday wasn't really much of a news day, so nothing really happened. And it kind of feels at the moment that maybe the market is either pricing in a positive CPI print tomorrow, or we're just waiting to see where that comes. And I think tomorrow is just a precursor. Everyone's really waiting for the announcement we're going to get on the 18th, but we'll delve into that in a little bit. But it is good to see Bitcoin making a strong start to this week after a couple of weeks of falling. What I would say, though, is we're only at 57,000, which is the level we were at Thursday close. So we have managed to recover those gains, and we have pretty much been climbing since the drop on Friday night or Friday afternoon. And so with 4 or 5 days, or I was looking at about 7 or 8 12-hour candles, maybe we'll get a little bit of a pullback, but still a nice move initially. And maybe actually when we go to draw some lines on some charts later, it's a logical place to bounce, confluence of support and also EMAs, etc. We'll delve into those a little bit later on. One that I am happy with, and I think, we've talked about Casper just being a relatively bullish token, or very bullish token, throughout the last sort of 6 months when the rest of the crypto market, altcoin market and Bitcoin has been dropping. And last week, again, it suffered a little bit, but the bounce it's made at the start of this week, whilst probably similar in percentage, certainly looks more convincing. And we'll look at Casper a little bit later, but there's a clear kind of level that it's come down off and it's just bouncing. It's had a strong bounce there. And so we've needed that. We've not hit this level since May. It's on the weekly time frame. Sorry, not since May, since the beginning of August. But from that, we've always seen a good bounce. And so maybe we start to see that move up to sort of 20, maybe even 21, new all-time high of 22. But this has always been the one, not always, because we know where my views were on this token at the beginning, but certainly over recent history that I've sort of spoke about being at least a strong asset within there. So for those of you that managed to get a little bit more down at this 14 cents level last week, good on you. I bought a little bit more yesterday. I'm trying to sort of top things up a little bit. Nothing crazy, but just sort of seeing how that moved. It seemed like a logical place to go with that. Now, on the contrast, Ethereum. Now, Ethereum's it's an odd one. It's altcoin number 2. It's altcoin number 1. It's crypto number 2. And yeah, it's not behaving like that at all. It's just flat. It's not even flat because it's deflating, to be perfectly honest with you. And it just doesn't seem to have the oomph that previous cycles have had, that kind of narrative that Bitcoin into Ethereum, large caps, then into micro caps. I don't really see at the moment the love for Ethereum there, and that's obviously reflected in how the Ethereum ETFs have gone. There's not been much excitement in and around those. We've talked about that in the past, and maybe the timing of the launch not helping that. But I'll wait till we get in later. But in terms of how it's battling on the higher time frames, EMAs, how it's battling fib levels, how it's battling just previous price action. Sorry, my mind went then. My mobile's popping off with Telegram chats. I don't think it's performing as well as a lot of other altcoins. And maybe, I'm not saying there's going to be a flippening. There's quite a big difference in market cap between the likes of Ethereum, BNB, and Solana. But maybe there's just more interest in networks like Solana. And Solana, we know, has done very well since the bottom of the bear market. And it's something that I was kind of looking at the price at the moment for Solana. And sorry to jump into this, but look at that. It's kind of down in that $130. Whether or not you love it, or you're passionate about it or not, from a long-term point of view, if we are going to see a bull run, we know how powerful Solana is going to be. There's some hell of projections of where people think Solana may get to. This seems to be in a pretty good level to buy. Long-term, not done any kind of detailed analysis on whether $36 or $35 or $34 is. I'm just saying, look at this chart here, looking at the price action over the last few months. Down here, we normally see a good buy, okay? So whether you think we're about to enter into a bear market and it's the end of the market, or whether you believe we're just in that stabilization period before we get the next leg of the bull market, this is an area of interest for me in terms of where to buy. And so for those of you that maybe have some disposable assets or looking to cycle into something a little bit stronger with a better narrative than some of the other ones you have, I wouldn't sleep necessarily on Solana. I've not kept up to date with a lot of Solana news, so I'm maybe not the biggest person to talk to about it. But certainly, just from a price action on where it is, I think it's at an interesting level, and we've seen strength all the way up to 200. So there's an opportunity even to just under double your money, even if you want to do a short-term play on that one. So I think it's interesting that Ethereum is struggling. Other ones, I mean, all altcoins are struggling, yeah, but the likes of Solana, layer ones, cheap, fast, breaks a little bit, of course. I seem to be able to take over the narrative, seem to be taking away not only users, but sort of projects and developers. And I think there could be some sort of play there. Anyway, that's not really what we use this chart for. And then we got Tau. And Tau's an interesting one. I know there's been some sidesteps. I unfortunately saw someone in the chat mention that they timed their sidestep last week at 222, which was pretty much the bottom, 220. And I'm going to talk about psychology a little bit later on, because I did mention it in Discord, and I think it's just worth, for those that don't really dive into Discord or to some of the channels in Discord, going over that again. But right now, a nice strong start to the week after a couple of weeks of falling, very reflective of where BTC is. That head and shoulders we've talked about before, part of me is like, is it just a weird head, with a right shoulder, with a double top that's formed? I kind of talked about whether there was a level there that we can consider a neckline. It kind of has fallen through and bounced back. I was kind of hoping, I'll be honest, that we could get that move down. But if you look, even on the weekly chart, and I am going to go into Tau in a lot of detail later on, but it's kind of wicked down to where the neckline was and had a clean bounce from that, and it's having a good move up. A lot of the obstacles in the way right now. I don't think we're necessarily out of the woods. For those of you that have sidestep, we'll talk about psychology of sidestepping a little bit later on. I haven't bought back in, but I think where I jumped out of is probably a better position than some others. So I've got a bit of time on my hand. But what I will say, and I'll go over it later on, there's only about 1 or 2 levels left before I will jump in. I will probably jump in, maybe even if it's just for a short-term play, and then see how it works up last time. Because a couple of times it's done that, I've not taken advantage of it. But we'll get into that later. Sorry for rambling on that one. So let's just jump into some news. And I'm not going through, I don't care about what's actually detailed within this article here. That's not really the point of why I have this on the screen as such. But for us, from a crypto point of view, yes, there's an element of interest within this. As I say, I can't imagine that cryptocurrency is going to be a topic of conversation that's going to take up some valuable minutes of this debate. But we kind of know where the battlegrounds lie, in a sense of Trump at the moment is very pro cryptocurrency, whereas Harris, I mean, she's not spoken to reporters realistically, not taking questions anyway, since she was the nomination. So we don't really have a feel from a personal point of view as to where she stands on that. Her manifesto, for want of a better term, did come out a couple of days ago. There was nothing necessarily in there about crypto. So that's not where my interest lies on this. The interest is from a traditional, or just from the overall financial markets. Now, leading up to elections is obviously uncertain. We don't know who is going to be in office come January. And so that uncertainty is generally reflected in the market. Once we know, so come November, my personal view is that will provide that'll provide the assurance and get rid of any uncertainty. We know who we're dealing with, whether it be Harris, whether it be Trump. And then from that, we can get some stabilization within the market. And, I appreciate that there could be other factors that we'll talk about a little bit this week and some next week. But generally, what I imagine we will see is we'll get the certainty that we got someone in. We get the certainty on exactly what they plan to deliver. And then checkbooks need to be opened so that can be paid for. So maybe we see some printing of money to do that, which is obviously good for risk on assets, etc., etc. But the reason tonight's debate is of importance is because we haven't heard Harris speak, or at least provide a response that hasn't been tailored, because she hasn't been taking questions. So I whether you like him or hate him, I don't think Trump has necessarily anything to worry about within this debate. I think all eyes are going to be on Harris and how she conducts herself, and sort of whether people get any confidence within that. And we had a period where the polls were very generous to Harris. And at one stage she was leading the polls. So that has completely flipped again. Some are calling it quite close, but there are definitely some that are putting Trump out. So this really is an opportunity for Harris to try and show herself. I mean, she was a solicitor, a lawyer, whatever you want to call it. So she should be able to stand up and argue points. So I don't think you rule her out at your peril, I suppose. But if it does come out that Donald Trump is sort of wins that and he comes off a lot better, etc., or gets those cutting remarks that he likes to do, I think we could see those polls shift and maybe we get some more confidence from the market before then. I'm not going to be able to watch it. We'll find out in the morning, but the markets will be open. So if any of you are there, the Asia market's open, the dollar's open, gold, all of those. I mean, technically Bitcoin's open as well. So maybe we do see some interesting movement in and around from there. I'll just wake up and see what happens. But this is the kind of a news article that does interest me. I mean, hey, wherever they pluck this number from, who cares? But we're starting to see if Harris wins, Bitcoin could sink to 30,000. But don't worry, because if Trump wins, we're rallying all the way up to 90,000. Now, I don't know where they pulled these numbers from, but these articles are what's coming out. They're there to create that uncertainty in that division. And, I think we just got to, a lot of us are more, how can I put it? We've got stronger stomach for this roller coaster. I don't think we really get put off one way or the other. I certainly don't get excited or scared reading those, but they're out there. There's no real backing behind that figure. It just sounds like a nice figure, same like 30,000 does. But for me, it doesn't really give a clear side to where we're going. And again, we talk about this bounce that we've had the last couple of days. I had to actually change the article because the article I read yesterday was out of date because we've obviously rallied since then and also after the article was written. So this one's kind of still the same point, but Bitcoin surges back to 57,000. And that's great, but we were above that level 4 days ago on Thursday. Yes, we had some unfavorable unemployment data, which rocked the market on Friday. We saw that big drop back down to 53,000 or wherever it was. We'll have a look at those in a moment. But, that surge, I feel it's probably a misused word, for want of a better term, in that, we have rallied back to that one, but it's only been 4 days, of which 2 of those days, the markets were closed. I know Bitcoin's 24/7, but I'm talking about traditional markets there. So we've got it. But the thing that gets me, and this sort of goes back to one of the questions that was on here, is Richard's put, thanks for the video. So you mentioned September being a bad month for BTC. How does this compare with traditional markets? So yes, last week we talked about Rectember or Redtember, whatever you want to call it. And traditionally, for the month of September, very bad for Bitcoin. We kind of see a 6% drop in price over the course of its time. But of the 14 Septembers that we've seen, or 15 Septembers that we've seen, 11 of them have been in the red. So, heavily stacked. And okay, 10 have definitely, we don't know how this September is going to finish. So it hasn't been great. And whilst we have seen this surge, as they like to call it, history would suggest that may not last for September. And if anything, we may unfortunately see some lower prices there. And just to answer Richard's questions a little bit better. So this is the seasonality that I talked about last week. And this is what you can see. So this is the data of trading days for Bitcoin across the month of September. Now, the date range says 2004. We all know that Bitcoin was around 2004, but that's where it started from. But it does take all the data of Bitcoin trading, and we can see, there were only a handful of green days across the month of September. Generally, in 2 days' time, that seems to be the most positive day. I imagine if I went back historically, would see that that's a lot of CPI days. It happens to be a Wednesday. I imagine that's when CPI data comes out. It probably looks good, and that moves it up. But as a whole, it's down on the month. But to go on to which question, we can actually move this across. Have a look at the S&P. The S&P for the month of September. Okay, we have more days that are green than Bitcoin, but generally, over the sentiment, it is a down month. And this is taken over 20 years of data. And you have a look on other charts. Can I get this other chart up? Probably not. Just bear with me a second. Nope. That was not what I wanted to do. Why can't I just get back to the home page? Okay. There's another one of these that, because this is version 2, which goes back through like 30 or 40 years worth of Septembers. Shame I can't find it, or I can't get back to the homepage. I mean, it's amazing that I can't get back to the homepage, really, isn't it? But that's where we are, unfortunately. I don't want to waste anybody's time within that. But we can see that am I even looking at my thing? Yes, I am. That we still have a red September, as I mentioned, more green days than Bitcoin, but still we are net down on September. And it crosses, we can type in other things. Let's have a look. Oops, that's not going to be it. We'll look at the NASDAQ. Not that. I can actually spell it right. Again, NASDAQ trading heavily down. I won't go through it, but it isn't what the point which I'm trying to make is September is historically a bad trading month across traditional finance and also crypto as well. So, whilst I respect the surge we've seen over the last 3 days, my thought process is this realistically going to be the start of a move out of the down cycle that we've seen, or is this just a little bit of movement in the month of September before we start returning back down? Unfortunately, history suggests it's the latter, and maybe we do have some more falling, and we'll have a look at some targets or areas that can be a little bit later on. I appreciate there was a couple of other comments on there, and I will get back to those in a moment. Now, yeah, this is the thing for me, and I couldn't get the news article up, but I was watching Trades Reality today, and he was talking about there's like $6.3 trillion at the moment that's just sort of kind of sat on the sideline in sort of bonds and funds, etc., and not actually jumping into the market. And the reality is that that's probably why we're seeing some stagnation and not really any movements across the traditional markets. Everybody's waiting for next week, and the key step for next week is going to be tomorrow. So 1:30 UK time tomorrow, we're going to be looking at the CPI. And we're really interested, I suppose. Previously it was 2. Now we're forecasted it's going to be 2.6. And so we get under 2.6. I think that's going to be a very bullish signal towards Chairman Powell to make not just a rate cut next week, but that 50 basis points rate cut that everyone wants. A lot of people saying 25 just won't be enough. We need to kickstart this drop back down. We're far too high. Every other nation in the Western world has started cutting rates. US are very late to the party in that. Not my assessment, just what people are saying. And so it's not just about cutting them, it's about making a statement and cutting those quite quickly. We see 2.6. I think, while people will be happy, I'm sure that's going to give plenty of ammunition towards Chairman Powell to suggest that actually maybe it is a cut, but it's just a 25% cut. We see higher than 2.6. And again, so that unemployment data, was saying that there was more people in jobs and actually pay was still quite high. Not necessarily what you're looking for if you're wanting to find the ammunition to take those rate cuts. So we start to see CPI coming in higher than expected as well. And then that may cement the decision at 25 basis points. Now, I don't think, if you look at the sort of possible targets and rate cuts, let me just refresh this because this changes all the time. Okay, so there isn't really a suggestion that we're not going to have a cut, okay? There is two sort of indications here. There's a 50 basis points, which is at 33%, 25 basis points at 67%. But just have a look over the last month, because the data's been coming in a little bit hotter than expected. Whereas it was a 50-50, we've started to see that actually swing a little bit more to that 25 basis points, which, as I said, yes, that looks like it's a positive thing, but I don't know how well the market will actually react to that, just given that most people are expecting a bit more of a stronger move forward and seeing, seeing the rate cuts cut quite strongly over a shorter number of cuts to get us back down into where we necessarily need to be. So we've got, as I say, CPI, and then it is next week, FOMC on the 18th. And we'll have a look there. Actually, on the same day as the FOMC, we've got Britain producing their CPI previously at 2.2. We'll see where that ends up. We've already started cutting our interest rates. So yeah, there's plenty of news to sort of move that market. But I wouldn't be surprised. Of course, there's going to be some volatility tomorrow. There always is. But if there's no necessary reaction, I wouldn't be too surprised by that. I don't think it's good or bad necessarily. It just might be people want to wait another week. And that's maybe where we'll need to go. That's going to link back into my sentiment a little bit later on when we talk about side steps. But let's actually start having a look at price of BTC. So the usual chart, let's not bother going through it, but let's just have a look at what the price has done. This is Bitcoin on the 12-hour chart at the moment. We've got the fib levels there as well. The fibs are taken top to bottom. So the all-time high now down to where the spike down has been. And just look at how this has formed some of these fib levels. So last week when we met, or when we spoke, we were resting on the 382 level. We lost that with a little bit of a fight. Jobs data, as I mentioned, came out on Friday and we flew down. What did we fly down to? It was a 236, but we actually wicked below. What did we wick out? This gray box here, they were the long liquidation points, okay? Took that out and immediately reversed. And that's, that's why we have these on our charts. I don't always bring high block up because, not everyone has it. I try and put them on here. It's taken that out and it's reversed quite nicely. And it has been a decent, okay, over the start of the weekend, it was just battling that 236 level. But then we've had that strong move up. But look what we've run into. Right smack bang into the 382, okay? A previous battleground. I mean, look at the amount of times we've been there. All these wicks down, bodies and wicks down here. It's a pure level. So it's no surprise that actually over the last day and a half, we have stalled to get through that one. A break of this, in my opinion, and we move up to that 60,000 level, which is the 0.5 fib level. 60,000 is going to be a very interesting battleground, and we'll have a look at that in a moment. But just look at this. I just want to sort of show you, decision was made. This area of short liquidation sort of was starting to build when we lost this level back in the beginning of August before this drop. And this actually should be here. This hadn't formed here. It started to form after that. And you would have thought, well, look, they've come all the way up here. Why not just nip up and take it? Well, they have other ideas in their mind. But look at the speed at which they moved down to take this out. It's building up quite quickly, and they've taken that one out. So doesn't automatically mean that we're going to come back here. We can have that move back up, take this out. Now, what I would say, we get all the way up there. We get some daily closes above 60,000, that 64,000 level. Then I think we maybe have a bit of a bullish scenario there. But the point I'm just trying to make here is the market can move very quickly in how it wants to do it. So yes, there was some optimism when we were back at 64,000, 2 weeks ago. Quickly eradicated down to 22 on the fear and greed index, taking out this level here. We're starting to build it. But can you see, we don't have the vector candles here because that'll be showing up later. But what have we got? Just counting, 3 green 12-hour candles in a row without a break. Chances are on the lower time frames, we're going to start to see some divergence away from EMAs. What typically happens on the low time frames, price pulls back to those EMAs. So we may see a pullback, come clean off a rejection of this 382 level before we move back up. We'll explore that a little bit later on. But this is what I wanted to get into about this doomsday scenario, because I watch a lot of YouTube, I scroll crypto Twitter, crypto X quite a lot as well. And one of the things people have been talking about at the moment, one of my favorite kind of macro YouTubers, Alessio Mastini, he's been talking about Bitcoin's price action in and around the 21 EMA. So that's what we can see at the moment. We've got Bitcoin price. The blue is the 21 EMA. Now, that I actually generally use the 20 EMA, but he uses the 21. So I've changed this chart for the 21 EMA. There is a support and resistance line that's kind of goes back almost a year, October of last year, that sort of move up from October. So there's something there to bear in mind. But the point has been made, and we're going to have a look at past occurrences of this. At this present moment in time, this is the weekly time frame, and Bitcoin is trading below the 21 EMA. Now, what we found is over the last few months, we've lost the 21 EMA, and every attempt to regain it has been beaten back down. And so of the prior 2 attempts, we have sort of come back down and lost the 21 EMA. But the saving grace that we've had has been this support line, which has given us some sort of momentum to build another attack. Well, unfortunately, last week we lost that support line. And what we're currently doing with today's price action is we're battling to try and get above that support line And then we need to try and battle to get above the 21 EMA. Where's the 21 EMA sit? 60,000. 60,000, why is that important? Well, we've not covered vector candles yet, so it's got to be the fib level we talked about, and it was the 0.5 fib level that we mentioned on this chart here. So already we can kind of paint a picture of how tough that might be for Bitcoin to break through that. But let's have a look at some past occurrences. And the 21 EMA, something that we look at in bear markets, because look at 2022. Look at all this time here, all this downtrend. We lost the 21 EMA, and then that's what kept us down. You know, a couple of attempts to get back above it, but generally that's what beat us down. So that's why people start talking about bear markets and the 21 EMA on the weekly time frame. I'll talk about what happens during bull markets later on, but you can kind of see again in 2018 bear market, a couple of attempts to get through it, beaten back down, finally lose it, and we have the true bottom, and we build back out of it into a bull market. And again, I mean, I don't know why I have this on the linear, but I do. But we can kind of see 2014, again, similar kind of story happens. So you can kind of see why people talk about it in relation to bear markets. But if we believe in the 4-year cycle like we do, we're not in a bear market. Okay, we're in that transition year from Bitcoin to altcoins. On the way up, halving year happens, so we shouldn't really care too much about it. But actually, is there some similar instances here? Well, let's have a look. Okay, so 2019 leading into 2020. So we had the bear market, found that bottom, we rallied up, very similar last week in the conversation what we talked about, that move up from the bottom up to, this one wasn't an all-time high, but $14,000. It felt like a pretty close to an all-time high back there. And then we had this 6 to 8 month kind of low period here, where again we ended up losing 21 EMA, tried to battle back up it, and ultimately we had a rather large drop back down. And it was only after we had sort of cleared out some levels down at pretty ugly levels at just under $4,000 that we were able to build some momentum coming back out through that. Sorry, I should have. Don't know why I'm on the linear. It's not the easiest to navigate. But again, very similar in 2015. 2015 into 2016, that halving year. So we lose it. We try and battle to get back above it. We finally get above it. Bull run happens. And I think its price is just too small. I can't bother zooming in there. So it definitely has happened before. Whether or not it's doom and gloom that everyone talks about, you know, I'm not necessarily convinced myself at the moment, but the facts that I can't deny right now is we are below it. And it's not a good place to necessarily be, because for the bull market to continue, we need to be on the upper side of this. And right now, that is not where we are. Now, you could argue that we haven't had that big flush down yet, so maybe that's the move. But for me, the real battleground now has to be this 50,000 level, where this wicked down to before. Whatever happens over the next 4 or 5 weeks, particularly leading up to the election, in terms of price action, we've got to break this resistance. We've got to try and find some sort of way to break through the 21 EMA, building support from it, not just building up and then coming straight back down. We need to build some momentum to go back down through that. And if we can't find that, if we do find another rejection from this, even if we get through what we reject, then this level here is where, that's what I'd be looking at as a target. And if we lose that, unfortunately, on the weekly time frame, and again, we'll have a look at vectors later on, you've got to look at that zone there. And that zone there, 45,000 down to about 42,000. Months ago, we wouldn't have dreamed about talking about that. But where we find ourselves right now, we would be foolish not to at least prepare ourselves for that. Now, in times gone by, we've seen, these moves up to sort of new all-time highs and then pullbacks in the range of sort of 50%. Well, if I can find the right token, what have we really seen so far? The worst we've seen down to here is actually only 33%. And that's something that we used to be able to deal with quite often. Where price action currently sits at the moment with fear and greed at 26, it's actually only a 20% drop. 20% drop, and we're still as fearful as we are. If we were to see a 50% drop, 48 takes us down to 38,000. Well, let's just say we go down to the midway 42. That's only a 43% drop, which is going to feel very painful. Of course it is. But I don't think it's without the realms of possibility. And unless we see some good momentum coming out and breaking through both the resistance on the weekly and then also the 21 EMA, then I'm afraid we've got some concerns to be had. Now, I was going to mention it later, but I feel like it probably flows a little bit better now. We throw on the 50 EMA. Maybe we can get a bit of a better picture as to why we actually did bounce. Because the 50 EMA, and I am getting into the bullish side of things, and I will unfortunately jump back into maybe some bearish news. But what the 50 EMA is, the 50 EMA is our support in bull markets. Okay, you get into a bull market, it's generally the 50 that holds. Okay, 2020 bull market, move up, collapse. If you remember, what caused it was a 50 EMA on the weekly. Done it again, and then you can kind of see in that 2016, 2017 run up. I mean, the 21 held us very well, but even in the dips down, we never broke really below it till we got into that bear market, and then obviously all hell broke loose. So it makes sense. If I can find, I don't know why I use linear charts, drive me insane. It makes sense that actually we did see a turnaround yesterday at the start of the weekly candle, because we were battling with a 50 EMA, and we haven't touched the 50 EMA since October of last year. Since, it's what, 11 months ago. So we've been away from it for a while. Prices meandered back down here. Weekly time frames not to be messed with. So actually, is there some hope here that this was a position to take some solace from? And I mean, I do it every month anyway, so it's not like, pat myself on the back. But I did buy the Bitcoin. Gotta sound like my dad. I did buy Bitcoin yesterday. And it felt like this was probably a decent level to get in at. And so, after seeing the 50, there's maybe a little bit of hope there. Started to come back and maybe rain on people's parade, because this was the flow that I really wanted to talk about, because we're going to start mentioning vector candles now. And we're on the monthly time frame. But if we look and respect vector candles on lower time frames, then maybe we should have a look at this one. And one that, you can't necessarily ignore at the moment is this one here, this unrecovered vector. Now, last month's drop, beginning of August, took us actually pretty much eradicated 50% of this vector candle, but there's still that chunk of change that's left there. And so, whilst I accept that, there are some vector candles here that are unlikely to ever be recovered. Okay, so it doesn't mean that vector candles always get recovered, particularly on the higher time frames. But if they were to move it down there, look what we got, 45,000. We were just talking about 45,000 with this shoulder here. Does it go back? I didn't mention it before, but some of these levels down here, we got 42,000. We got this area of long liquidations down at 46,000. So suddenly, actually, which obviously you can tell now because we've got the vector candle there, this could be an area that we do move, unfortunately, back down to. And maybe we just got to accept it. September not being a great month, uncertainty in the market, potential rate cuts around the corner. Maybe we do, unfortunately, see some move down to that here, and it kind of takes that out. And I'm hoping, obviously, we don't get there. I'm quite happy with where I am with my Bitcoin position. So I don't necessarily want to be seeing that come in. But I got to keep an eye on it, because vector candles do like to get recovered, and there's a lot of other activity there that could cause the market makers to move price down to there before then building that position. And we touched on this last week. If the dollar is going to suddenly become cheaper to borrow because interest rates have gone down, and they want to move into risk on assets, well, they don't want to be paying 50, 60,000 for Bitcoin. It'd be better if they could move it down to 45,000, and then they can buy more Bitcoin with the money that they borrowed. So, don't put it out of the realm of possibility that we could see a move down there for people to be able to fill their bags. So even if we do get the rate cuts, and I will talk about this next week in a lot more detail, doesn't necessarily mean that it's game on time. We may see a move down for people to fill their bags and then be game on time. So I think that's something to bear in mind. But if we have a look on some lower time frames, let's try and get that bullish picture kind of built back up. So we got the daily at the moment. And what is interesting, I don't know if it was last week or the week before, I'm sure someone can correct me, but I talked about this potential W. And we said 54K be a great level for that W to form and then to move up. And it's kind of done that. I mean, right now, you've had drop 1, drop 2, drop 3 into the W. So this is potentially, that's 1, 2, 3. We've got the W there. Are we actually seeing right now a position where we can be making that move for a long-term sustainable move to the upside? And I can't really rule out this W yet at all. That's what it looks like. Certainly on the daily. And if I squeeze a chart, you can really see how that W has kind of formed. And okay, went a little bit lower, but 54,000 was what I was looking at, just under 53,900. So not too bad a move there. Yeah, okay, we got a little bit of a vector candle, and when we're on the daily, we're not too worried about how the W looks, as long as there is a clear W. So let's just assume that this was a clean W. Let's not worry about FOMC or any elections or anything here. What we'd now expect to happen is we'd build up through here. Certainly want to be getting through the 50 EMA, absolutely. So that's at 60,000. Again, pretty important level there. But actually, if we want this to be a true double, it needs to clear that. It needs to clear 64,000. 64,000 again. Another important level. Oops. And it's the 618 at 63,000. We've got that liquidation levels for the shorts from 66 onwards. So there's definitely some targets for them to move up at. And what we'd then be looking, I've gone and done it, don't normally do that. What we'd then be looking, you know how this pattern kind of works. But that move up, why did that just, that wasn't a path, that's why. It's amateur hour, I'm afraid. Come on. Killing me here. That move up, and then, how it goes. Something like that. And who knows how high that goes. That wasn't being drawn accurate. But that's what we would like to see from that. And it's a daily. So don't think that move up is going to be complete in a week. It took 6 months, 8 months for us to come from the all-time high M formation. So that M formation ended end of April, or beginning of April, sorry. So I'm going to use my fingers here, May, June, July, August, September. 5 months to get from the second peak of the M to potentially the second peak of the W. And so could we actually see that that's how this forms? And I don't know how high we go, but over the next 5 months, we're going to see sort of that, January, February time, maybe see some sort of turnaround, which again, we'll talk about sort of cycles and everything else at a later date. Now we go on to some lower time frames. Let me just get rid of some of this stuff because I want to drop it down to lower time frames. And again, we have seen some good moves. Even right now, we're running into some strong moves over the last hour. It feels like we've probably gone up 1,000, but we are leaving some vector candles behind. We've already touched on the 12-hour, how it's just been 6 or 7 white and green candles in a row at the moment. We're running up into that 50 EMA right now, and we just got to be cautious that we may see some form of pullback, collecting, down here before a move back up. We drop down to the 4-hour. And again, it's just stacked with vector candles right now. I kind of feel like there will be some sort of pullback. Maybe we come up 58.5, maybe we come touch the 200. We then have that move back down to try and clear this out. But even on the 4-hour, I won't bother doing the counts, but definitely looks like a double bottom of some sort. So, what do we expect? We expect that leg up, and then we expect some consolidation. So, good to see that it's moved up, but we expect some pullback. Now, let's take that into the psychology, because I put it here as me, because it's someone in Discord, I can't remember who it was, had the bad sidestep, and we talked about, where do we go from here? Do we just, wing it and pray that we get back down to the level that we got out on, or do we need to actually have a think about it? And the reality of it is, we're not always going to be right. We can't always be right when it comes to trading. And so you've just got to accept sometimes you've got it wrong. And the worst thing that you can possibly do, and I have done it countless times, is just stubbornly held on to the beliefs in the hope, and it is hope, and you know in your heart it's hope that the move's going to come back down there. And so what I would say is have a look at market structure, however you like to evaluate the charts. And I do think if you have taken a sidestep and right now you are feeling uncomfortable about it, the absolute worst thing you can do is be a sheep and wait to be told what to do. You need to summon up some sort of belief within yourself that either you are right in the decision that you made, or where have I gone wrong and how can I get back in? So waiting for someone else to tell you that, I have to say is not the right position. It's okay when things have gone well and you're the right side of it, but when you're the wrong side of it, there's so many different factors that can cost you from getting back in at a time that you would have felt a lot more comfortable at. So just bear that one in mind. But yeah, whatever it is that you like, whether it be support and resistance, whether it be EMAs or fibs or whatever, find something in which you feel comfortable. Now, for me, Bitcoin, how could I do it? Okay, well, we were down here before. Can we see that move back up? Well, as we've said, 12 hours, 7 candles in a row. Generally, over the last 3 days, it's been up and it's left all of these vectors down here. One would argue at some stage there'll be a pullback. Now, for me, I'd be looking at two things on the 4-hour chart here. We've already broken past the 50 EMA. The next thing that really is sort of dragging my attention is what's happening here at the 200 EMA, basically 59,000, bunch of history in and around there, kind of at that 60K, that 0.5 fib retracement level. That's where I'd be looking. Do we get to see a rebound here? And you don't act on the EMA or at that level. You would wait to see where it comes back down to. So I'd be looking at once we've hit that level and I've seen that it's turned, because then you're thinking, oh, well, I was right. I'll wait to get back to my towel sidestep level, my Bitcoin sidestep level. No, that's just your first indication, your alert. Get your meerkat senses going, saying, right, one thing has happened. We've had a movement back. At this moment in time, I need to decide whether or not it's a full-on rejection or it's an opportunity for me to get back in. And again, then you're looking at, well, what could it be? Now, I like to use vectors. I like to use EMAs, everything else. I'd be looking at where's the 50 EMA? How about this vector recovery here? And if I see it come into here, take this, but then move up, that's when I get in and go, right, I accept that it's moved up. It's had some strong move there. You can look at lower time frames if you want to try and help build that picture, whatever it is. But the point is, if you're sat there and only you can answer it, wishing you were back in, and two, thinking, how am I going to get back in? You've got to do it yourself, because what otherwise is going to happen is it's likely going to go up, bounce back down, start moving up again. And then you're going to have that same discussion that needs to be had. Now, as I say, it's the blue vector candles, 12 minutes to go on this 4-hour candle. So we are seeing that the volume is slowing down, but it's a strong candle there. It's not like it's had a sell pressure from that for it to be a stopping vector candle or anything like that. So we could just see a little bit more sideways action and then that move up. But all I can suggest, I can't remember who you were in the chat, and I don't want to name and shame you now, is just make that decision if you are feeling uncomfortable about it to get back in, because as I say, wishing and wanting not always going to help bring that to you. Now, the only other thing that I actually thought was worth mentioning, if I can find it, is there is actually a CME gap. Let's get rid of that for now. There is a CME gap. And so maybe that presents an opportunity to get back in. Now, the CME gap falls exactly on the 50 EMA, right down here. Okay, and the CME gap, so we closed on Friday at 53,600 and we opened on Monday 1,000 higher, okay? Now, CME gaps, I can't find a CME gap that hasn't filled in the last year and a half. And I won't bother going through it again. You don't believe me, just put BTC1 exclamation point and have a look for yourself. So they fill, they always fill, okay? And so there is a target here, whether it fills tomorrow, whether it fills next week, whether it fills the week after. There's definitely a target here in which you could find yourself trying to or positioning yourself to potentially get back in. And the reason I say that is because if the 50 EMA is so strong, what could logically happen? Well, we could move down to it, close that CME gap by wicking down into it, and then bouncing from that one. So I would certainly keep my eyes open around about 54,000. As I say, last 18 months, I can't find a CME gap that hasn't filled. There was one that took a couple of months, I'll accept. It might have even been this one here in December 23, and it didn't fill until January. So, sort of a month and a half before it filled. But they have done that. So I think there's one ray of hope if you've not made their buyings. But I too sidestepped with Simon around about, that was the CAS one. Yes, again, with CAS, it's nearly 2 cents above where it is, and it's had a strong move there. So 14.8 here. Unfortunately, right sort of at the body close on the weekly, and then a strong move. And what I would say with CAS, and we'll have a look at altcoins in a moment, it just has such a nice level to it. It does feel like this. What am I on here? Am I on a linear again? Dirty linear charts. I don't know why I do it to myself. Actually, maybe I should have been on a linear. I don't know how I drew it so much better on the previous one. I think it's probably because it wasn't from there. It's from there. But it has had such a nice little move there. It does feel like this could actually be a bounce to the upside. But it's the same situation you've got to find yourself in. But since we talked about it, let's just get CAS up. We'll touch on it now. So, what have we seen? We're on the 4 hour, just double checking. What I would say, I don't really see, maybe I might have to go even lower. So what I'm not really seeing is a clear pattern as to how we got to where we were. Because look at this, it just stagnated for so long. That's when Tau really recovered against CAS, wasn't it? But let's go back onto the 4, because otherwise that's going to hurt our eyes. I would say probably then you've got sort of that move there. This is where it is right now. Unfortunately, what do we have? Why do I not have the 800 EMA? Oh, it's down here, that's why. So we're kind of, I wouldn't say necessarily in uncharted territory, but we've run out of EMAs that I would normally use. So I'm going to have to throw a fib on for you and just see what I can see with that. I am obviously, those vector candles there in and around the 50 EMA, absolutely appealing to me. But I'm just trying to find what a turnaround point would be. So let's just do body to body on the 4 hour. It's not particularly nice, I'll be honest. I might be stretching at saying 16.8. It's bust through 328, the 5, and the 681 very well. Let's just do it on the daily. Let's just line up the bodies to bodies here. And then now let's drop it back onto the 4. Obviously, it's not going to line up perfectly now because I've moved it. But that's starting to make a little bit more sense. Kind of running into this at the moment. The last 4 hour candles, seen that rejection there. But if it doesn't turn around here, you've almost got a full retracement back to that 16.8 level. I know it says 17.2 there. We moved it, but it was 17.2 because I moved it on today. That could well be where it is. But as I said at the beginning of this, CAS is the one that has, for the last 6 to 8 months, shown strength. So that could be a very painful, do I just have to bite the bullet and take a little bit of a hit and accept you don't always get it right? I didn't sidestep CAS, so, except for Tau and the dot sale, and I don't really class the dot as a sidestep. Everything else I've just kept. I was more just trying to take advantage of some things there. But that's certainly where I would be looking at. Let's throw it on the daily. We have broken the 50 EMA on the daily. We're at the top of the cloud though, so maybe there's a bit of hope. We're running to the 786, top of the cloud. That vector candle's still down there, but it's only at 15.5 at the 382, which is also the 50% recovery of the vector candle. So maybe there's that pullback to there before it heads back up. This looks a little bit more like, and there's no M, that's the problem. But we do see that sort of move up and then it's kind of collapsed back down. So anyway, Brian, I hope that helps. I'm not sure. I'm going to go back to where I was. ETFs, let's just quickly talk about ETFs. They've completely dried up. No one's necessarily interested in buying them at the moment. Why aren't institutions interested in buying? Because they're waiting for the FOMC. So don't take this as it's a failure for the ETFs. People just generally aren't buying. Yes, people are selling. BlackRock have sold a little bit. 20 million, 22 million's worth. I don't know what they've done today. Not exactly a huge amount there. You can be sure that come tomorrow, we should get a bit of an indication. But I think they're going to wait. We may see a little bit of activity. People are just going to wait, see what the FOMC really does. BlackRock have a lot more on their books than just Bitcoin. So they're going to want to see how that's going to ultimately affect their entire position, and then how they're going to try and sell that to their clients, if you will. So I don't think this is necessarily a suggestion of a failure or that fatigue or anything like that. It's just the whole market is just waiting to see what that step's going to be. And we had that Jackson Hole meeting where Powell pretty much said it was happening. That's why you don't have a percentage chance of it not getting a rate cut. I mean, we get some really bad CPI data tomorrow. Maybe that increases. But it was almost a foregone conclusion. But people just want to see how much it's going to be. Look in here. Let's just refresh this. I don't think you even need to. This kind of gives today's data, but I prefer just to wait till people are a lot smarter than me. Doesn't seem to be too much happening. Maybe a bit of movement and sales, some purchases, but this could just be moving from one wallet to the other, which is why, I like to wait. But yeah, we shall have to unfortunately wait and see on that one. And yeah, good move today. I try not to look too much at the price whilst I'm talking, because we know what always happens on a Tuesday. But another strong move out of there. And I just want to give a little bit of a nod and a heads up to Reese, I think it was. He talked about the fetch Tau chart and it inverted head and shoulders in Discord. And sorry I haven't got round to comment on it. I did see it. And you did it well today, because it was an inverted head and shoulders with a better potential upside for fetch. So I hope you took that trade, because fetch is up 10% today while Tau's only up 2%. So that's going to look quite good for you. So if you end up watching this, congrats for that move there. But just going back onto seasonality and sentiment, and potentially where I need to position myself, because I have moved out of the market, 60% of Tau, left at about 320. I sold my dot as well, and I've been using that to buy CAS, and I want to buy some other things. September may have been a bloody month, but we changed that to October. October, very strong month, okay? Regardless of the financial picture, the last 15 years, October has proven to be a very good trading month. November, another very good trading month. Regardless of the financial picture, regardless of who's in power, regardless of where interest rates are, has generally seen a very strong month. And so Q4 of any year is a powerful month. It's why we talk about October. It's why we talk about the Halloween effects, why we talk about the Santa rally. And so being so much out of the market, I kind of gotten to get myself to a position where 2 weeks time, probably after the cuddle, if I haven't found a reason or an entry position to get back in, I'm going to go back in. And, well, let me rephrase that. I am very, very likely to go back in. Unless something monumental has happened to the sentiment and the overall picture of the market, I would rather be in and take a hit just getting back in, so that I didn't miss the potential gains that we could see in October and November, which historically we have seen, going back to, again, this chart here. Look at it. October and November, very strong months. So I would rather be in those. So going back to that sentiment for those of you that potentially have sidestepped, again, wishing you get to see a level that we've previously already seen. You've got to balance that against the risk of missing out. And look, if we go back to September, look, down September, we're like, oh yeah, August was pretty bad. Beginning of September, maybe it might come back down there. Maybe it might come back down. I won't do anything. I won't do it. Bang, you missed it. It's gone. Okay, so that move can happen very suddenly in October, and then you will be really kicking yourself, and you'll end up YOLOing in on the top of a green candle, and you'll miss that pullback. So have it in your mind that actually a decision may need to be made that just supersedes what you're seeing on the chart bands, and that's how I'm going to deal with it. If I haven't found a reason to be back in by the end of September, I'm just going to go back in. Maybe I'll have to phase myself back in over a week, and we'll take that hit as and when it comes. But that's how I'm viewing where we need to be on the market. Just one other question that was asked. Hopefully that helped, Brian. I've seen the emoji you put. Adam just put, with BT hash rate at all-time high, do you think Bitcoin's price will follow suit? So hash rate is just a reflection of the security of the network. And historically we've seen, I know it looks like a flat line here, but that's just because we're now in terahashes or whatever it is. What is it? terahashes, whereas before we were in kilohashes and mega hashes. So this chart just goes from bottom left to top right. It's all it does. Yes, it has occasional pullbacks, particularly under strenuous times for miners. So the China banning mining and miners going bankrupt, etc. We kind of see it drop off. But why people talk about Bitcoin hash rate, if that goes up, then price goes. Well, Bitcoin's not exactly the same. And yes, there is a correlation between it, but it doesn't mean that because Bitcoin hash rate today has gone up, that tomorrow Bitcoin will. It's more of a lagging kind of thing. And I think personally for me, it's not something that I follow because, you look at any chart over a long enough period, it goes from bottom left to top right, but trying to find some real correlation to it, I don't necessarily see it. I do believe that as the network gets stronger, that's only going to make it more harder to difficult, which means it costs more for the miners to do that, which then that means that they ultimately need to push that price up. So that's how I feel that it is going to affect it. How and when we see that pump, it could be 2-3 weeks away, it could be 2-3 months away. But yes, Adam, it is at a high level. It's at the highest level it's been. Trying to see if it's yesterday's data. So the hash rate 7-day average is 676,586,889. Okay. Don't know what it is today, but yeah, I do think we will see that move up. Oh, that's it with the daily values rather than the 7-day. So a bit harder to read there. Okay, let's have a look at some altcoins, shall we? And we'll start with Tau. There's a lot of information on the right hand side. Let me have a quick drink. Urjan said that he's got out at 14.7. Look, and don't beat yourself up, right? If it doesn't come back down, don't beat yourself up about it. Just get back in where you feel it's comfortable, because the worst thing you can do is beat yourself up. I don't know how much you sidestepped, and I don't know if you did it all or not, but let's just say you mess it up. You're 100% 14.7. If you're one of those that think that we're going to get to $1, let's say for round numbers of cows in the next 6 months, then is 2 cents really? I mean, yeah, it stings. It stings for a little bit. Of course it does, because you've got to live with your personal shame that you got it wrong. And then if you're open about it and you don't like it, you've got the shame of having to tell everyone else. But the reality of it is, it's a fraction of a percent of where you hope to see this target going. So, don't beat yourself up. The worst thing you can do, as I say, is just wish that you could have a time machine or wish the price to move back down there. Use what you know, or what you have learned about this to try and make an educated assessment. And ultimately, if you can't find that reason to get back in, just go, right, I'll go long term. In 6 months' time, this is going to be a 10x from where it is. I'll only take 98% profit rather than 100% profit, whatever it's going to be. Mr. Tacos, how are we doing? It's been a while. I think several country governments are starting to mine, which likely add into the hash rate, Japan being one of them. Well, there you go. It certainly is going to help that. And just going back, I mean, I'm going to struggle to start pronouncing some of these, but petahashes, that's a quadrillion. Then we've got an exahash, which is a quintillion, a zettahash, which is a sextillion, and a yottahash. I didn't even know that was a word, yotta, but that's a septillion, which 1, 2, that's a million, a million, million, a million, million, millions, that's a million billion. It's a million trillion, I think, if my maths is right. So yeah, we might be a while till we see a yotta hash, but the fact that we're throwing these out there just kind of shows you where people are expecting this to go over the years. Adams put, we spend a lot of time charting and analyzing based on the 4-year cycle, but every time the Fed has cut rate, a sizable drop has occurred in risk asset. Can it really be different this time? Adam, I'm not going to answer your question. That is exactly what we're going to talk about and investigate next week. So I will see if I can. I'll take a copy of that. We'll dump that in here. And we'll pick up that next week, okay? So just put that for next week. It is something that I have been working on for a couple of weeks. And so we will talk about it then, if that's okay. Actually, one of the things, I will be at the Cuddle and I will be giving a presentation, and one of them actually does touch on this as well. So for those of you who come into the Cuddle, you'll actually get a 40 to 50 minute longer version of what my answer may be there. But yeah, Sorry for sidestepping it now. Going back to Tau though. So it's quite a bit of information here because we're sat on the daily right now. But as I go through some of the time zones, I just want you to bear in mind some of these other things. So all I've done is I've kind of like looked at where vector zones are. I've looked at what the EMAs are at certain ones. So then I drop down through the time zones. We can kind of still get to see where they are. So don't necessarily worry about them too much. But on the daily, you know, what have we seen? Let's zoom out a little bit. So we had the move down. This is, again, what I mentioned at the beginning. I was wondering down here, you know, was this the neckline? And I know we dipped down, but it was a very quick jump down. So was this the neckline? And I was thinking we might see that move back down, get to sort of that 200 level. But actually what it was a support line. Maybe it's a triple top, but right now we've had a nice bounce away from that. And so that double top just doesn't look like a very nice double top at the moment. So what else have we seen from there? Well, since we've dropped back down there, we entered into this vector candle from the green, but we didn't take it all. Okay, so there is still some there. We went past the 50, but it was bought up quite quickly from the level we're at. And then since then, last 4 days, we've moved up, breaking the 10, breaking the 20, which does happen quite a bit. And what have we run into? Our old nemesis, the 50 EMA. The 50 EMA that has basically haunted us since 700 or 600 when we lost it down here, the Binance listing. And then ever since then, we've kind of had it. And you know what happens. The only 2 times that we've ever broken free of the 50 EMA, we've been beaten up by the 200 EMA on the daily, and it's pushed us back down there. And so this is where we find ourselves right now. And it's no surprise that actually the last 2 days, we've not found the momentum to punch through this. After a strong move 3 days prior to that, we've kind of stalling around the 50 EMA because it's tough to get through. But if we do, and we close above it, I honestly will probably jump back in. Certainly before 320, so we're okay. And I'll just ride it up, and I want to see what it does here because I missed doing it there. We got out where I missed taking advantage of it here. Actually, yeah, that's right. And so I want to see what it happens. And again, you know, a daily vector candle all the way up here, right where the 200 EMA is. Seems like a pretty attractive target, to be perfectly honest. Especially if we do get a couple of good news over the next couple of days for a move up there. And so I want to try and take advantage of that. So I'm watching this. I've not done anything yet because I'm waiting. 285. That's what we're stumbling at the moment. That's what I want to see whether or not we can break. But it's not just about breaking it. We've got to hold above it. I'm not dealing with any of these wicks. So maybe I actually don't get it until 300. Maybe I only ride it up. You know, bounces off 330 and I get back out at 320 again. May not be the cleanest, but I just want to try and take some advantage. What I don't want to do is just be stuck the wrong side of this. So we're just going to have to wait and see. Let's drop down 12 hour. What's the picture kind of painting for us at the moment? Okay, so we don't have any vector zones down here. But what you can see is this long-term resistance line, which coincide with the 50 EMA on the 12 hour. We've broken above it. We're starting to build support. Still got 3.5 hours on this candle, but we are building above it. And we've got this uncovered vector zone around about 300 again before we get in. And then we got the vector recovery, uncovered vector candle, which was on the daily, but is also printing on the 12-hour time frame. So again, just helping to build that picture. We go down to the 4-hour, and now we actually start to see the remnants of the move that we've had. And this is talking about the pullback here, okay? So whether or not we want to call this, you know, I could zoom out and have a look at the whole picture, but your top. And I don't like this move down because I can't work out from a 4-hour point of view where these moves are. So this is either one big move, and then we're seeing that consolidation because we've cleared these now. So that doesn't feel like it. Or within here on the hourly, the 15, etc., we have seen 3 drops to it all the way back down. And we found some sort of bottoming pattern here. Maybe we have. Moving back up now, okay? But what we have left behind us, much like what we did with Bitcoin on the 4-hour, is a trail of trapped liquidity in these vector zones, okay? And whilst we have cleared the 50, And we're starting to move away from those. We know at some stage when we do stall, likely going to come back down and retest that 50. Certainly kind of check some of these vector zones here. So even on these ones here at the moment, we've probably got a couple of days, but we might see it drop back down to 260. Might be able to reduce the damage for some of you in there. But again, just going back to where that 12-hour vector candle zone was, it's another 4-hour up here. So maybe we do get that move up to 300. The problem with that is actually then, do we have the 200 and the 800 EMA on both the 4 and the 1 hour? They're obviously the same. As that's going to be the support. It doesn't get back down to the 50, comes off on that one. So that's something we want to bear in mind. Let's clear some of these things. I want to throw a fib level on there just to add a bit more confusion to everything, because hey, why not? Biscuits. Let's try and actually delete the right thing, shall we? So let's just go back onto the daily. See what the fib tells us just from this drop alone. Oh, well, wait a second. 50% pullback. So we've had a sharp move back down. What do we normally see from a sharp move back down? 50% retracement. 50% retracement also happens to be where we currently are at the moment, stalling in and around on the 50 EMA. And, it's not the cleanest, but in and around that resistance level that we saw stuff. So again, painting a picture of why it might be so difficult to get through there. So in terms of where I am, I think, we break through this, I may look for a short-term move up. But again, bearing in mind my sentiment of where I want to be come October. But if we don't, I'll be looking. And look, if this is a full rejection here from the daily, my thoughts will be, although there are vector zones here, I think we move back down to this level, back down to where some of you got out, and just either try and take that, or we start to fall a little bit further. But we just need to wait and see how this one plays out. DOT, DOT's like a lot of other altcoins. So yep, I'm out. We've had that move. We've had a little bit of a move up. This isn't a convincing move for me. Daily, there's no real vector to candles to talk of as such. It's very difficult to draw a fib retracement. We just don't know where the bottom is as it currently stands. But, okay, we've been riding the 10 EMA. Every time we've lost it, all we've done is come up to a 20 EMA. So I'm not necessarily too worried. 50 EMA is about where I got out anyway. So I'm just going to sit on that with where things are going. Anything else that I want to really look at? I said I was going to talk about Ethereum, didn't I? I think the problem that I sort of saw with Ethereum, that weakness, I think it was on the weekly. So just look, bear in mind we're on the weekly. So we got the 10 and the 20, okay? A bit like the 8 and the 21 for those of you that are old school with some of the Forex trading we used to do. But we got the 50. And again, we've had the loss of the 10, the 20, and the 50. We've come back up, but we've just nicely coboed off it. It just feels like this is moving down. And I get it, maybe some people can argue we're forming some sort of, maybe I might have to put that one there, push it in this way a bit, compression. And hey, we might be, absolutely. Especially, end of September comes, people are back at their desks and they suddenly want part of the ETF action. So there is a fall in compression. But at the moment, I'm just seeing more weakness than anything else. And that is reflected across, the altcoin markets as a whole. This is total 3 minus stables versus Bitcoin. And again, Bitcoin is winning. We've had some moves up and we're starting to see a little bit of move up there. But ultimately, that is winning. It's still winning in Bitcoin dominance. And so just generally, altcoins just aren't doing as well. And as I mentioned at the beginning, the ones that are, of the big boys, BNB and Solana, maybe they're the ones that have got more interest for people right now than Ethereum. And it's funny because Ethereum's problems have actually come about from when they resolved the gas fees, making it cheaper. And it is a lot cheaper to send on the Ethereum network at the moment. But that doesn't seem to have helped them. Adams, but do you see a big inverted head and shoulders on the Bitcoin weekly? I don't know how big I'm looking. Are you thinking 1, 2, 3, and then go time? Or are we thinking just over the last 6 months? I mean, that would be more on the monthly. You could see that one. Yeah, okay. So, I mean, absolutely, but that could take 6 months or so to play out if we're on the monthly. You're taking that data back, and I'm not saying it's wrong. We're all hoping, let's face it. It is a bad thing to have, but we're all hoping for that, aren't we? So, it's a logarithmic position from here. Let's just have a look. Let's just play the world of fantasy. Let's just say that's the neckline. Actually, 300,000. Well, it's not, because let's put it on the linear. I knew that would do that. Now let's draw it so we can actually get an accurate amount. So it's going to be about 60k. So that'll take you up to 130,000. I think a lot of people would suggest, that that's low for what they want out of Bitcoin this cycle. We'll have to wait and see on that one. Ties in with the rate cuts. Do you mean the beginning of the rate cuts or where we are now? I don't want to talk too much about next week. I think the rate cuts, I think we need to look at those quite interestingly in terms of, one, historically what they've found, because we've only experienced that once in Bitcoin's history. And that was in oops. That's what I've done. Sorry. Let's just take that off. Let's just delete this. I need to do it on a new price scale. Just put that on the monthly. So yes, we had the rate cuts in 2019, which obviously coincided with the real big crash when the rate drops would drop from, 2 down because of COVID. That we saw it dropped massively, but we don't really have too much data on how rate cuts have impacted Bitcoin, and that was a hell of a spending spree that then happened after that, in which people weren't around to do anything. So yeah, that needs to just be explored as to what this could do for Bitcoin, both over the short term and over the long term. And I want to overlay that with how traditional markets are gone, because it's not quite as clear as just rate cuts happen, market falls away, or rate cuts happen, market pump. There does seem to be some sort of suggestion that actually it's a multi-staged move. And I think we need to bear that in mind, and then that has repercussions on timings for exiting and all sorts of stuff. So let me discuss that next week. I think we're an hour and 20 in, so I think we'll probably leave it at that. Apologies if I kind of cut off the altcoins a little bit sooner. I will get up to talk about that next week. I don't think there's anything else there. But if anyone does have any last minute questions whilst you're typing away or thinking of those, again, thank you very much for tuning in. Week on Saturday, Y Boston for the cuddle, stopping overnight. So it'd be good to catch up with people in the bar afterwards. If you can only be there for the day, though, as I say, I'll do 1 or 2 talks, I'm sure. I just need to speak to Simon about how that all fits. But I've certainly got one up my sleeve that I think people will find interesting. I'd definitely be contrarian to what a lot of people current views are, but hopefully that'll just help open some people's eyes. Other than that, I just want to again say thank you very much for joining me tonight. If you got any questions, as always, just drop them in Discord and I will get to them as quick as I can. And if I don't speak to you before, I shall see you all on Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your evening and speak to you soon. Cheers now.